And now, aviation weather around Alaska. I'm National Weather Service meteorologist Peter Chan, and now let's take a look at your Alaska aviation weather outlook for Monday and Tuesday. It's been an active pattern through this past weekend. A lot of adverse conditions as the result of a strong low that lifted up out into the lower Bering Sea. That low will be eventually tracking just west of St. Lawrence Island early Monday morning and then up toward the Gulf of Anadyr as we head into Monday afternoon. The secondary front and low development that occurred in the Gulf will have then by Monday morning will have a dissipating occluded front or trough that runs here along the Gulf Coast into the Panhandle, but widespread IFR conditions are anticipated along this diminishing front. We have areas of snow, rain, reduced visibility across the Panhandle, snow here, Wrangell, St. Elias Mountains on up to the Alaska Range, dipping down into the southwest and then back out over St. Lawrence Island and south of the Bering Strait. Some of that moisture has also pushed further inland, so we have pockets of IFR along the Alcan border, 40-mile Gold Country, and then up here toward the middle upper Yukon River Valley and up on the south central side of the Brooks Range. For Monday afternoon, we find conditions improving in the Panhandle to MVFR, but still areas of IFR lingering along the lower Alaska Range into the southwest, west of Lake Iliamna and north of Dillingham. We have areas of IFR here in the upper Yukon Valley, Yukon Flats, as well as back toward the east side of Norton Sound and on the southern shoreline there of the Seward Peninsula. For Tuesday morning, widespread IFR conditions are expected along the Alcan border, southwestward all down the length of the Yukon River Valley, along and west of the Alaska Range, and just a large area of IFR conditions. And then we have another low beginning to show up southwest of the Aleutians, and ahead of it we anticipate IFR conditions there in through the Aleutian chain. This low will not be as deep as the past two big storms, still respectable at around 970 millibars instead of 940 like the last two big storms. And then Tuesday afternoon, again, we expect widespread IFR conditions along and north of the Alaska Range, as well as the west side of the Alaska Range, extending up into areas of the middle Yukon Valley, 40-mile Gold Country, and then extending up south side, especially of the Brooks Range, all out across areas just off the southwest coast, Nunavik Island, St. Paul, St. Matthew, into the central Bering Sea, as well as along the Alaska Peninsula and especially the Pacific side. Past conditions for Monday, Anaktuvik Pass will generally be MVFR, but the south end IFR. And same thing, Adigan Pass, generally MVFR conditions are expected there in the Brooks Range, but south entrance IFR, and Lake Clark and Merrill will likely experience IFR conditions throughout the day. Monday, Rainy Pass, also IFR. Windy Pass starting out IFR early Monday, giving way to MVFR conditions. Isabel Pass, MVFR, becoming IFR. And then further east, Mentasta Pass, MVFR conditions becoming VFR as we go through Monday. And down further southwestward across the Copper River Basin, IFR early there at Tanita Pass, becoming MVFR. Same thing, Portage Pass, do expect a fair amount of IFR conditions in the morning, giving way to MVFR. And now in the far northern part of the Panhandle, we expect IFR conditions there Monday morning into maybe midday before becoming MVFR. Looking at freezing levels at the surface early Monday morning, we find a bump of temperatures near or just above freezing all the way up to south of St. Lawrence along the southwest Yukon, Kuskokwim coastline, and then back out along the Kenai coastline, northern Gulf Coast into the inner channels of the Panhandle. And with that frontal system that's pushed up by Monday morning and beginning to diminish here in through the outer coastal areas of the Panhandle ahead of it, we've seen freezing levels aloft bump upwards above 2,000 feet to 4,000 feet height at Kauai, and then south and southeast of there 6,000 and 8,000 feet respectively. But threats for icing, a large area of just isolated moderate icing potential across much of the mainland into the Gulf and into the Panhandle, but a little better chance of some moderate icing above 3,000 feet here, intercoastal mountains, inner channels here of the Panhandle, south of the Gulf into the North Pacific above 6,000 feet. areas where we have mainly patchy light snow. There could be some areas of briefly moderate snow above 2,000 feet where the cloud cover is a little thicker and the precipitation is occurring. And then back up along the southwest coast, YK deltas back up toward St. Lawrence Island, there could be some moderate icing above 3,000 feet. Upper level jet stream winds, we have a core of 150 knot jet stream winds from the eastern Aleutians to out over the North Pacific. And then with the low circulation, the trough in this region, bring it down to 9,000 feet. You can see winds southwesterly across the Seward Peninsula, 35 to as high as 50 knots in the lower Chukchi Sea. We also have another broad belt of stronger winds over 50 knots well south of the Aleutians and the Alaska Peninsula. And then there is a little more compact low that's going to stay south of the Panhandle here as we go through Monday night and Tuesday, but it is bringing stronger southwesterly winds at that 700 millibar level in excess of 50 knots up toward British Columbia coastline and Vancouver Island. And at 3,000 feet, we can see that feature a broad area of 50-plus knot winds coming on up into British Columbia and off of the Vancouver coastline. That low should stay, though, well south of the Panhandle. And then we find another area of persistent winds here, eastern Arctic coastline around Kaktovik, Barter Island areas could still see ground blizzard conditions as we have these brisk easterly winds continuing in that location. And then with the remnant low that we were talking about passing just west of St. Lawrence Island early Monday and then up into the Gulf of Anadyr, we find a broad belt of 40 to 50 knot winds in the northern portion of the Bering Sea through the Bering Strait into the lower Chukchi Sea and along areas of the western coastline. So as a result, we have a number of areas where there could be moderate turbulence, one of them being in the far eastern Arctic coastline where there still could be some ground blizzard conditions and brisk winds out of the east-southeast, surface to 3,000 feet. Here along the west coast, especially from around Cape Lisburne, Point Hope southward, there could even be some isolated areas of severe turbulence along the areas of near the Bering Strait. That's primarily surface to 4,000 feet. Then we still have some areas of moderate turbulence possible along some of the capes here of the southwest coast, Kuskokwim, western Bristol Bay, and then down across parts of the Alaska Peninsula toward the eastern Aleutians between the surface and 3,000 or 4,000 feet, and then also some pockets of moderate turbulence possible over the lower half, the southern half of the Panhandle, surface to 6,000 feet.